Hey guys, welcome back to Just a Geek in the Garage. So today I want to continue talking about Snap-on here, but today is going to be 5 tools that I actually regret buying from Snap-on. I've done other videos obviously of, alternatives to Snap-on, things like that, but I'll be honest with you, most of the tools that I've gotten from Snap-on I enjoy, I use, quite a bit. They're usually the first one that I'll grab just because I, spent so much for them. But there are a handful of tools and, the ones in front of you, plus some other mentions here that I absolutely would never buy again. And I'll kind of explain my rationale here in this particular video. So let's just get into it without a huge intro here. And let's kind of start off with these pliers right in front of us. So, I've said on my videos of, reasonably priced alternatives. I mean, these things can be had from other companies for a fraction of the price. Both these guys are about 60 bucks a piece. This one, if you really want this style of plier, you can get it from, Icon or other places for, a third the price, if not cheaper than that, 20 bucks or so. And I just don't like this kind of plier. I don't use it. I've never really found a great use for something like this. I've used it on occasion, but I found myself grabbing almost any other type of plier than this one. I feel like it was 60 bucks, so it was just basically kind of wasted. And the same goes for this guy. Obviously channel lock is the OG of this type of plier. That's why everybody calls them a channel lock, even though the real name is the tongue and groove. But, I'm going to grab a Knipex, Cobra or, alligator or something like that well before I'm going to grab anything like this. So, I got this guy. This is one of the few Snap-on tools that I can honestly say I have never used. I bought this thing, it sat in my toolbox, and I've never had a purpose to actually pick this one up. Where I know, there's commenters that always comment, oh, your tools are so clean, you never use your tools, things like that. Which, you guys are welcome to comment whatever you want. I do use these tools. A lot of these tools I've had for, 20 plus years. I just take care of my tools, right? I like to, clean them off after I use them. And, especially when you're spending something like 60 bucks on a tool. I know some guys, if it's all dirty and banged up, that's a badge of honor that they use it. If that's what you think, great. I'm not going to say anything negative about that. You treat your tools however you want to treat your tools. But when I'm spending this amount of money on something, I like to take care of it. Plus, one kind of benefit is the type of work I've done in the past. I've never really had to deal with a lot of grease and things like that. So that's another reason why my tools tend to be clean. But anyways, I digress. These two I would definitely not buy again. Next up is going to be these type of adjustable wrenches. Now, these ones have definitely seen their use. I've had use cases for these guys. But, when you can buy the Bahco equivalent for a fraction of the price, these things, even this little guy right here is probably close to 100 bucks, where the Bahco equivalent is probably about 25 or 30, and they do the same exact thing. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to grab the Bahco, next time instead of going with the Snap-on version first. But some of the other ones here, like this guy, super expensive for what you're getting. And especially this one. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get some hate for this guy, but this is the one that is the kind of their flank drive plus equivalent from the adjustable side. And honestly, all I've ever done with these is mar up fasteners and strip things and stuff like that. Yes, these are objectively better than a lot of the adjustable wrenches out there. They grab better, they don't move nearly as much, but there's still going to be a little bit of play in there. And when you add play plus teeth, it's just not a good combination. It's almost the same reason why I don't use, this kind of plier right here, because I find myself, kind of stripping things more and marring things more than doing anything good with them. So especially for the price, I would skip these guys again, and I wouldn't buy them. Now, I don't mind having the Bahco version in my arsenal here, especially the ones with just the normal smooth finish right here, because they grab well and they're gonna get the fastener. Normally, I'd prefer to grab the regular tool I need, the actual wrench, the actual socket, versus grabbing something that's adjustable. But again, these I would skip. So quite a bit of money wasted right here. Next up, let's talk about this hammer. So, Doc did a video a while back about how sometimes when you spend a lot of money on a tool and you're going to do a job, and you're looking at the tool, you're like, man, I spent over $100 for this hammer, which first of all, it's crazy to spend for a hammer. And you know, it's nice. It's still kind of, you know, in good condition. You know, I've used this thing before, but not when anything is kind of dirty. I tend to grab my Pittsburgh one instead. You know, I've had a Pittsburgh version for a long time. The other one that I have was all kind of, you know, banged up, but it still worked perfectly. I took it to my business to use for for business basically, and then I swapped this one out and just bought a new one recently. But you know, when you have a hammer that's, you know, a couple of bucks versus one that's $100 and you're working on something and you want to kind of beat on it, I tend to just grab this guy. So I'm sure I'm going to get some comments about that, but that's the only reason why I wouldn't buy the Snap-on hammer. It's not that there's anything objectively wrong with it. It's just the price plus, you know, seeing these things damaged. At some point, it kind of hurts my wallet just to look at something that I've damaged. And I know I can replace them, and I've replaced hammers before with Snap-on, but sometimes it takes a while to get the right hammer back. You know, the last time I swapped out a hammer, it took, you know, multiple weeks for them to get the hammer that I wanted back in stock. And then kind of last up of the regular tools here, you know, I've talked about this guy a few times on this channel, and you know, I do a lot of precision work. I work on a lot of electronics, stuff like that here. And so I picked these guys up thinking, you know what, you know, let's give this a shot. And when I got it, I was honestly just super disappointed, so much so that I almost returned it. You know, I just kind of missed my window and ended up not returning it. But a few things, you know, when I was talking about Snap-on and their quality control issues and things coming dirty and all attention to detail, this right here is kind of a prime example. So I got this brand new online, right? So they shipped it to me. It was still sealed directly from the factory. So I know it wasn't somebody messing around on a truck looking at them. And what happened was when I got these, most of these bits were not in their place. And because of that, they kind of damaged the foam that's up here on where it is. Again, not a huge deal. It's not going to affect the actual performance of it. But when you're spending, I think this thing was close to $150. That's pretty, you know, that's a pretty bad presentation to have. On top of that, you know, these are made in Spain, and shows it right there. So again, it's probably a Bahco product. And so they're charging you US made money for a tool that's made in Spain. And the last thing is, you know, it's probably going to be hard to get on camera, but I've barely even used these things. And if you can look at the fit and finish, it's just not that great. Even things like the way, let me see if I can get this on camera. I mean, I don't know if you guys can kind of see that right there, just the way this thing was cut from the factory line. Like, this looks like something I would get from, you know, Harbor Freight 20 years ago. Even Harbor Freight has better quality control than something that has the Snap-on name on it than something like that. So this definitely, I regretted so much buying it. I almost returned it, and I really should have. You know, if anybody from Snap-on is watching, this is what I'm talking about. You know, just better quality control, and even lowering your prices a little bit, I think would bring you guys a lot more business, especially from us, you know, home gamers that grew up when Snap-on's name actually meant something. But you guys can continue doing this kind of stuff. It makes me go to, you know, a company like Tekton, right? Tekton, I paid maybe $40-50 for this set. You know, way more bits, much nicer, you know, handle, and, you know, even just a nicer presentation overall. And I got it for a fraction of the price of this, and it's just much more useful to me, right? So, and I think a lot of you guys, especially watching these videos, have a similar sentiment to what I'm saying here. Last up, this is not necessarily a tool, and this was an impulse purchase that I had, again, that I regret. Let me see if I can actually get this on camera properly, but it is going to be this fan right here. If you guys aren't familiar, let me see if I can take this down. Here we go. Sorry about that, guys. So this fan, if you guys don't know, is, you know, a Snap-on fan. You can get this kind of on the truck. You can, you know, buy this thing online. It is almost $100 for this fan. And again, I don't know what possessed me to buy this thing. Actually, you know what? I do know what possessed me to buy this thing. I was on Snap-on's website. I was kind of in between Snap-on guys at the time, and you have to spend $250 to get free shipping on Snap-on. I had a few things in my cart, but I needed roughly another $100 more to spend. I saw this guy, I was like, you know what, it's green, it's cool, I'll just add it, you know, to justify it because I'm going to get free shipping. I've regretted that decision basically since I did that. A couple of reasons. One, the first one of these that I got, and if you guys, actually, let me see if I can turn this on, if it actually will show up on camera. I apologize for the noise. Let me turn on. If you guys can kind of see, I know it's flashing on the camera, but what this is going to show is it's going to show you the time. It's going to show you the temperature, both in Celsius and Fahrenheit. And so I thought that was really, really cool. And again, in person, it's not flashing like it is, you know, here. Let me turn this off just because of the noise. So I thought that would be nice to have. I got a clock, I got the temperature in the garage, and, you know, it's green to match everything else. $100, you know, after I bought this and got it, the first thing that happened was the first version of this one was actually not symmetrical or not straight. So the time, everything was kind of, you know, shifted over maybe about 15, 20 degrees. And that really, really annoyed me just because of, again, how much I spent on something like this. I actually went on Amazon and looked after the fact. You can get a fan similar to this that just simply doesn't have the Snap-on logo for like 20 bucks. Maybe even some of them are like 10 bucks. So a lot of money wasted. And again, this is indicative of Snap-on, right? They take something, they slap their name on it. There's no quality control, and they charge you a ton of money for it. So this one, 100% I would skip. If you guys have been looking at this guy before, you know, I personally would not recommend it. The rest of the tools are definitely useful in their way, but again, the fan, I would skip. So, you know, tell me, you know, what do you guys think? You know, are these tools that you actually would purchase and keep? What do you think of my rationale for skipping these tools? And then, as always, you know, if you have any suggestions about other videos that you would like me to make, you know, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe.